Hey, so I was just sitting in my room playing video games and I look over to my phone and I noticed that I have like 20 plus Twitter notifications. So I opened Twitter to see what the hell is all the fuss about, and apparently Spider-Man has left the MCU. So I opened the article and read up on it for myself, and I was disappointed, but I didn't really feel like it's something that I needed to make a video about, so I clicked away. Then a few moments later, I go back to Twitter and I see people saying stuff like boycott Sony and petitions to bring back Spider-Man to the MCU. And apparently people are blaming Sony. Now I was like, wait, what? Why is everybody blaming Sony for this whole Spider-Man ish? So I realized that people really didn't understand the totality of the situation. So I decided to make this video to give everyone the bigger picture and let everyone know who they should blame in this situation. So let me give you guys a little backstory. So back in 1999, Marvel Studios was hella poor, so they decided to sell off the movie rights for some of their characters to various studios such as 20th Century Fox, who got the rights to the X-Men, and Sony, who got the rights to Spider-Man. Marvel actually offered all their characters to Sony for $22 million, but Sony was like, no, they're only interested in Spider-Man, so they bought him for like $7 million. So fast forward a couple of years, Disney buys Marvel Studios, and then they start the MCU. And then a couple more years down the road, they decided they wanted to introduce Spider-Man into the MCU. So Disney struck a deal with Sony that for 5 movies, they will allow Marvel to incorporate Spider-Man into the MCU. And they set up a contract, and the terms of the contract go as follows. So the terms of the contract were that over the span of 5 movies, Marvel will get 100% complete creative control over Spider-Man, which will allow them to do whatever they wanted, 100% of merchandising revenue. Keep in mind that merchandising is a huge source of revenue, and some movies are literally made for the sole purpose of selling merchandise. So think of how much money that generates. And they also get to keep 5% of the profit. While Sony, on the other hand, would 100% finance the movie, meaning that they'll pay for other production costs and everything else, and then they'll receive all the rest of the profits. They also gave a condition that if Spider-Man Far From Home doesn't make up to $1 billion, then the creative control for the character will revert back to Sony. But now Spider-Man Far From Home is out and it made $1.1 billion, which means Marvel can still keep Spider-Man. So the problem now is Disney saw how much money Spider-Man is making and tried to negotiate with Sony, saying that they split the financing 50-50 and also increased their profit percentages from 5% to 50%. Keep in mind that Disney will still get to keep 100% of the merchandising revenue. So clearly these demands proved to favor Disney more than Sony, and then Sony said no. They don't agree with the new terms and said they want to keep the agreement the way it was before. Disney got provoked and then decided to pull their producers. Now, as you can see, Disney is asking for way too much here, since all they do is provide the producers, and if they co-finance the movie, obviously the profit will be at least 3 times the budget because of how much money Spider-Man and the MCU generates. Plus, Disney won't even share the merchandising revenue, so Disney is clearly being greedy here. But yet Sony is the one being labeled as the greedy corporation because people think that they make bad Spider-Man movies. Like, really? They only gave us like 2 bad Spider-Man movies, and don't forget that they gave us masterpieces like Spider-Man 1 and 2, and not to even mention Spider-Man PS4, which is literally the best Spider-Man adaptation ever. But yet people want to boycott a big corporation in service of an even bigger corporation, all because MCU fans are blind and only care about movies from the MCU. Now, some people are actually happy about this, saying that at least Spider-Man would finally get a good standalone adaptation free from constraints of the MCU. But in my opinion, a standalone movie and a movie set in a cinematic universe are fundamentally different, and they can both be equally good depending on how they decide to maximize their performance measures. Now, personally, I don't really care who makes the Spider-Man movies because I'll literally watch anything that has Spider-Man in the title because he's my second favorite superhero. But bottom line is, everybody is blaming Sony and accusing them of being a greedy studio because they don't want to sacrifice their profits in order to make a good Spider-Man movie. Meanwhile, it's Disney that is dumping Spider-Man from the MCU just because they wouldn't increase their profits. Now, if you ask me, clearly Disney is the greedy studio in this situation. But hey, negotiations are still ongoing, and for all we know, we could just wake up next tomorrow and see that both studios have come to an agreement and Spider-Man is back in the MCU. Or, Sony could just buy Spider-Man for like $7 billion. nobody can say no to that.